broadcasting worldwide from a studio inside global headquarters of RP Enterprises in Kansas City.
Hey, gang! Ladies and gentlemen, Papa's home!
This is the Papa Ron Podcast.
File transfer in progress.
With Ronnie Phillips and Jillian Gregg.
Showtime.
All right, we're back for another edition of the Papa Ron Podcast. And again, brought to you by for our friends at Brown Piercing Cattle Company. By the way, tonight for dinner, Jillian, is smash burgers. Smash burgers on the Blackstone.
What time should I be here?
Why don't you just hang out the rest of the day? Looks like Everly's got some homework to do. She's going to watch some YouTube on the 85. So Brown Piercing Cattle Company has incredible beef. They've been breeding registered Angus cattle for generations with one thought in mind: quality beef for consumers. Their goal is to deliver prime-graded beef directly to customers' homes more affordably than you can purchase them at the store. Better beef conveniently delivered at a lower price than the grocery store. Find them online at brownpiercingcattle.com. I am excited about, and I say this before every single guest in every show, but I am really, really excited because I am a sports geek. And this guy, I mean, I'm telling you, like, you couldn't be in a better profession, I guess, at least in the fall or the winter, to be a sports radio talk show host than to be one in Kansas City, of all places. Welcome to the Papa Ron Podcast, my friend Nate Bukaty. How are you, pal?
Man, what an intro. That was awesome. Now you got me excited, too. I've been excited the whole time.
I hope you're excited. You drove all of this way to global headquarters RP Enterprises, in Greenwood, Missouri.
Are you gonna hang for smash burgers too, or
you might as well? Oh, you got to do Royals post game.
Yeah, go cover some Royals post game. So I otherwise would love to take you up on that. So the last time I've been in this part of the metro was when I used to come visit Ryan Lefevre all the time, who I know has been an honored guest on your show before.
Has. Yep.
Used to back in our days before we were both married with kids, hang out at his place all the time.
Yeah.
At Lake Winnebago.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
So, anyways, it was
and now
fun
he's just right down the road from here.
See?
Yeah.
He's got horses and everything now, doesn't he?
No, I didn't know that.
I believe he does. Yeah.
Holy cow. When would he? Well, I guess he can do that.
His wife has the horses, I think, is more appropriate. Yeah.
She needs something to do while he's traveling the country.
He's gone all the time.
Covering the Royals. Man, thank you so much for being here. There's so much to cover, and as we alluded to, you've got to do Royals post game here this afternoon, so we want to get into the thick of it. But, I guess we'll start, how you and I met, which is kind of weird. Not weird, I guess what I'm trying to say is we met basically because I was do you even remember this? I was a Goober fan of listening to sports radio while I was still working at Q104.
Okay.
And I was still even doing nights.
Okay.
And
wow.
Yeah. And it was right after, and you're going to have to remind me his name, but he eventually got let go because he never showed up to work and was doing the morning show on 810.
Johnny Renshaw?
Yeah, but he had a nickname. What was
the Freak.
The Freak. That's it. Yes.
Yeah.
The Sports Freak. And so that was my introduction to sports radio morning show on sports radio talk on a morning show. And he was interesting when he was there. But it was not very long that I had started listening to that when Steven and
Bob Fesco.
Yes, they started. And then that was short-lived. And then you came in, and you were still on 810. I mean, you were in, and you were doing a variety.
I've been covering the Royals, traveling with the Royals at that time.
Right. And so after then you started, I sent you an email just randomly, just say, hey, man, I love what you guys are doing. I actually work in radio also, working at Q104, and you fired an email right back and said that your wife was a big Pat Green fan, and she listened to Q104. Do you remember this now? Is it all coming?
Yeah.
And then so fast forward a little bit to I think it was the Big 12 basketball tournament.
That's the first time I remember meeting you face to face.
Right.
Was Big 12 tournament. Yeah.
And we had it's so much fun. That is like my March, well, aside from September, March is my favorite time of year. Right. And I loved the energy in the Power and Light District for the Miller Lite Fan Fest. And so Nate and I got to work together and be on stage and do stuff together. And then when we're not on stage, we're back in the green room shooting the breeze. And he's a KU fan. I'm a K-State fan. And so, we got to have those conversations. And so it was just a really cool experience. And from there, the relationship has grown a little bit with them giving us the opportunity to come on Sports Radio 810 and talk about the Heartland premiere, which, by the way, that is coming up this June. So I'm going to be hitting you up to come back in. So just thank you for being a friend and someone who's always been encouraging to me and allowing us to promote the Heartland brands on sports radio. It's really appreciated. Oh, and then the other part was the caveat is he was fraternity brothers with a guy from my hometown, Jake Wassenberg.
Huh.
Yeah,
Jake was my pledge dad. Yeah, wow. You know his hometown is famous as the home of the Black Squirrel, right? Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
How do you not know
Black
that?
Squirrel Festival and everything.
Black Squirrel, Black. What do they call that? Black Squirrel Night or something like that, where it's on the Friday night before Halloween. Yeah,
it's a thing. Like it's a real. Like there's a black squirrel.
So,
oh boy.
See, you're going to get some good stuff from him by having me on the show.
Maybe you guys should interview me today.
Yeah, let's go.
So apparently, the railroad, the Union Pacific Railroad comes through Marysville.
Okay.
And apparently many, many moons ago, the train derailed and it was a circus train is the tale.
Okay.
And when the train derailed, then the car with the black squirrels got loose in Marysville. What? And now only black squirrels reside inside Marshall County, in particular Marysville, Kansas. That is, I don't know if that's
Have you seen one?
The only place.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know if they were like elusive.
In fact, there was a time, and being the hunter that I am and as a kid with a BB gun, it's illegal to shoot black squirrels. And I had snuck out the backyard back into the country and shot one.
You were poaching black squirrels.
And I got caught. I literally got caught. Gosh. And a guy by the name of Joe Gonzalez threatened to call the police on me because I shot a black squirrel.
You got all these stuffed animals in here. Why don't you need to have a stuffed black squirrel? You know, that would be
I'm afraid to go to jail.
Yeah, that's true. But
it's Missouri. So like,
I don't know.
Surely some have made it to Missouri, right?
I don't know how the law works for past sins and things. I'm just not going to risk it.
Yeah. But I do feel blessed to know about Marysville. I've been to Jake Wassenberg's wedding was in Marysville.
Okay. At St. Gregory's Catholic Church.
Is there a Penny's Diner? Yeah, we went to Penny's Diner late at night.
Yep. Where did you guys have the reception for Jake's wedding?
It had to have been at like the VFW or something, right? I'm assuming there's a VFW in Marysville.
So it was probably the American Legion.
Gotcha.
Mine was at a VFW.
Okay, yeah. So my small town experience was Ark City, Kansas, and that was the best place to get a steak in Ark City, and have a reception was the VFW. So either American Legion, VFW, something like that. I don't remember for sure.
They also have a Knights of Columbus Hall.
Yeah, there you go.
So. Marysville, the metropolis of Marysville. So, Nate Bukaty has been there.
Yeah, we have a lot of connections like that. When I was in college trying to study to become a sportscaster, we had a guest lecturer named Mike McKenzie come in and talk to the students one day. And he, it's one of those moments you always remember exactly what he said. He said, if you want to go into this business to become rich or famous, you're going to be sorely disappointed.
Yeah.
If you go into this business hoping to meet some of the coolest and most interesting people you'll ever meet in your life, you'll feel rewarded your entire career. And this conversation right here just comes to mind. The way the two of us met one another, working in somewhat similar career paths, but having such different, lives and all of that. Your life is the richer for it. My life's richer for getting to know you. And
well, thank you.
And it's fun to be here.
Likewise. Well, I'm glad that you're here. What is it like right now? Let's back up a few months with everything that was going on in college football, then college basketball and the Chiefs. What is it like to be a sportscaster in Kansas City? Like you're got to be on top of the mountain.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's a lot of fun.
Is it more work though?
Well, yeah, for sure. Yes. And it's funny that you bring that up because we do sometimes sit around and talk about like, well, if the Chiefs win, awesome. Yeah. Parade, everybody's happy. If they lose, there's going to be a lot less work next week that we have to do. And that doesn't mean we're, you know what I mean? So it's like, well, I'll take the positive whichever way it comes because I can't control the outcome of the game anyway. So there's a lot more work with the NFL draft coming up. That's going to be a busy, busy week. And it's always one of those things where we talk about, man, I'm really excited about this. And I'm also really excited for it to be over. So that there'll be some downtime afterwards. But I'll take it. Having covered when I first started in Kansas City, the teams were kind of bad at everything. This is a lot better.
Sure.
I'll take this.
So, but what about, I guess I look at it, what people may not understand who are listening and not familiar with the broadcast industry is that Nate has responsibilities beyond just showing up and sitting in the studio every single morning. Like we talked about earlier, needing to go out to Kaufman to do the post game today, and you'll be on location to do various events, power and light during Big 12 tournament. You're bouncing around the city, and it's not just those, 4 hours that you're on the air in the morning. But for those 4 hours that you're on the air, if the Chiefs do lose and then there is some downtime and you're not as busy, does it make it harder then to find things to talk about? I would imagine it does.
Well, I think the toughest time on the sports calendar lately has been in the middle of the summertime when the Royals are out of it and the Chiefs aren't really playing. When I think the month of June, my NFL calendar should be better implanted in my head by this point in time, but there's kind of a quiet time where the players can't, they're mandatory. They have to be let go to do their own things. They can't be forced to be around the facility. There's no real transactions happening in the league. And, those days it is a bigger struggle to figure out what are we going to talk about, we're going to fill 4 hours with. Honestly, though, I've started to come to the point where I look forward to those stretches because when it is football season now, you have to talk football almost the entire week. And that's 20 hours a week. Not that any of us ever really don't want to talk about it, but, the bigger challenge then is how are we going to keep talking about football without saying the same thing that we said for 4 hours yesterday until the next game comes around? And it just becomes like, I believe variety is the spice of life. So, for example, when we get to have you guys come on, we don't spend a lot of time talking about waterfowl hunting, Yeah. And so now all of a sudden I get to talk to you and I get to learn something about something that I don't know as much about. Maybe we get a chance to talk a little soccer, which is a big passion of mine, and we don't get to talk as much about it on the morning show because that's not what the bulk of our audience is interested in hearing. So I kind of look at it as a bright spot because we get to do some things that we otherwise wouldn't be able to do during football season. Because, if we do something like that during football season, our bosses are going to come down and knock on the door and say, why are you not talking about the Chiefs right now?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's all good.
How long have you been doing the Border Patrol with Steve in St. John?
Over 15 years now.
Gosh, dang.
Which is hard to believe.
Really?
Yeah, it's hard to
Time has
believe.
flown
That's a
by.
long time in talk radio, isn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like that, though.
So did that opportunity, did you feel like that was something that you were already employed by 810, right?
Yeah.
So was it something where you had to go to Chad Boger and, say, hey, I'm really interested in this opportunity? Because Bob had left to go take a position in St. Louis before he came back to go now be your competitor. Was there other people that were open for that job? How did that all come about? Or do you even remember? Because that was so long ago.
I remember specifically how it happened because at the time I was covering the Kansas City Royals and they were on Sports Radio 810.
That's right.
And 810 had the Royals rights for 4 years and they lost 400 games during that 4-year span. And when I was brought to 810 at that time, it was to specifically be a guy that would travel with the team and cover the team home and away, which was an amazing experience for me as a young guy. I was in my 20s, my mid-20s at the time, hadn't really gotten to travel much in my life up to that point, and all of a sudden I got to travel all over the country and spend some significant time in all these different major cities, and really loved that experience, but also kind of started to realize that maybe working baseball wasn't going to be my
future.
Yeah, baseball, it's every night. You're never home. You're always gone. Even when you're home, you're not home.
And when they're losing as much as they're losing, that's tough.
The old adage that somebody told me was, the great thing about baseball is there's a game every night. The terrible thing about baseball is there's a game every night. And so I was figuring that out, and it was pretty clear to me that 810 was about to lose the Royals' rights, or they weren't even really trying to get them back because it just had been such a bad run.
Right.
And they had overpaid for the rights to try to get them in the first place and all that. And so I saw maybe there's a possibility if the Royals go to another radio station to work there. Honestly, I was reluctant to join the morning show. It was actually Aaron Swartz, who you remember was our producer at that time. And Steven was doing the show by himself for a while. Steven had gone through a few different co-hosts in his roles at the time.
After Bob?
No, through Bob.
Okay.
And then they really hadn't figured out who they wanted him to work with. And Aaron came to me. We were actually at the Overland Park Athletic Club playing racquetball, which is not something that probably might have been the last time I played racquetball in my life. I don't even know why we were doing that. And he said, hey, man, I think you should co-host the show with Steven. And at the time I was traveling with the Royals. And I said, I don't know, man. I never really wanted to be a talk radio guy. I always wanted to be a play-by-play guy. Those guys were my heroes growing up. That's what got me into wanting to be a sports broadcaster, was Bob Davis and Denny Matthews and Fred White and Kevin Harlan. Like those guys were my heroes, the ones that told you the stories of your sports heroes. Yeah. And talk radio, I don't know. I never really wanted to be the hot take guy that's trashing the players or, demanding this guy get fired and all that stuff. And I kind of had in my mind that that's what talk radio was supposed to be, because that's what a lot of talk radio was. Yeah. And so I was like, man, I don't know. I'm doing this pre and post game stuff now. They're giving me a few opportunities to do some play-by-play stuff every once in a while with the Royals. And he said, look, I just think you and Steven would actually vibe well together. And he just hasn't been able to find a good fit yet for to host the show with him. And really, honestly, I did it. I said yes, because of the uncertainty of the future with the Royals. I didn't know if I would get an opportunity if they went to another radio station. I didn't know what my role would be at 810 once the Royals left. So it felt like, okay, this is a smart thing to do, at least make myself a part of something, see how it goes, and maybe they'll let me continue to. And I was doing play-by-play for the KU women's basketball team at the time, and 810 was always, like, Chad Boger just has been amazing to me to let me chase these other dreams I have while doing stuff at 810 at the same time. And I'll always be appreciative of him for that, because not every boss is like that, as you probably know. Oh, yeah. And so that's how it got started. And then 15 years later, here we are. So
and you're loving it.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're loving it, right?
Steven, I feel like I'm working with the best sports talk radio personality in Kansas City.
He's so good.
And one of the best in Kansas City history. The guy connects with the fans better than anybody I've ever worked with. He's the funniest.
He's hilarious.
I mean, he is just hilarious. And we vibe well together. I think we have the right number of similarities and the right number of differences that we refer to each other as our work spouses a lot of times, and so
Jillian's had a couple of those in her day.
You know how it goes. Yeah. You spend that much time together. You have your little moments where you're annoyed with each other and things like that. But overall, I mean, for 15 years, it's been awesome. So I feel very lucky that Aaron Swartz came to me and he really pushed, he's like, you should do this.
So when you said that you said yes, was Aaron recruiting you for Chad, or was it just something that came to his mind? It was his personal thought, and then it got you inspired to want to go to Chad or whoever made the decision at that time and say, hey, you know what? I might want to give this a try.
I don't really remember exactly, and I wouldn't know the discussions they had when I wasn't in the room.
Well, sure.
But it was Aaron that came to me, and it sure seemed like it was his idea.
Okay.
And I think, of course, I think the biggest thing he had to do was pitch it to Steven and see if Steven was willing to give me a shot. Mm-hmm. And he was, and so I think the final decision was more Steven than anybody else.
Okay.
And I think everybody else just wanted to see, like, hey, somebody that could work well with Steven that he likes, then let's give it a shot. So, for the first year, Todd Lebo was the guy that kind of helped. He's kind of like our de facto program director. Yeah. And he said, well, you got to give up doing the Royal stuff, right? And I said, no, not for this year. I didn't want to. I was kind of trying.
You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Steven doesn't like me after 6 months. He kicks me out.
Right.
I don't. Maybe I'm not any good at this talk radio thing. And so I did both. I did the night times covering the Royals and did the mornings.
Wow.
And I didn't have kids yet at that time, so I thought, well, this is one of those moments in my career. Which, by the way, I feel like I'm in another one of those moments right now, where it's like, suck it up for a year and do both.
Yeah.
And that way you have options. You can figure, you're not going to get yourself just like stranded without a boat in the ocean or whatever. I don't know what the metaphor is.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I think it's stranded in a canoe without a paddle or something like that.
Up a creek without a paddle, something like that. I don't know.
That is so funny. Did you have a good relationship with Steven? Because here's what I wanted to say. Like, he's got a very strong personality.
Yeah.
But he's got the heart of a teddy bear. Like, he really is a big hearted guy, but it's good. He's not going to just and this is just my own my 30,000 foot view from what I see from the outside, but he's not going to just be open-minded to just anybody who's going to fill that role. You've got to be the perfect fit. That glove's got to fit for you to.
You know, there's a really funny story, and it comes up a lot on our show. I did not invite him to my wedding.
And that was after you took
I had been doing the morning show for some time, but the invitations had already gone out, I think, before we started doing the morning show together. No. I didn't think Steven really liked me very much before when Aaron came to me. You know, I thought he kind of tolerated me.
Okay.
As you said, look, Steven is... he does have one of the biggest hearts of anybody I've ever met. And all you have to do is see how involved he is in his children's lives.
For sure.
This man loves his kids and is dedicated, the most dedicated father probably that I know. And that just goes to show where his heart is right there. But I also think because of his upbringing and all that stuff, he keeps a tight circle, you know, and he presents an intimidating exterior. I think, like I said, because of the way he grew up.
Yep.
And so it's hard to get in there into his inner circle. And honestly, I think the harder you try, probably the less you're going to get in there. Mm-hmm. And I didn't try. I just kind of, hey man, you know, I'm not going to get in your way. Don't get, you know, I'll leave you alone. When we're together, let's hang out, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so, so I kind of thought he didn't really like me that much. And so when we were putting the wedding list together, we didn't invite him. And it comes up a lot. You know? It makes for awkward conversations a lot of times.
Was he hurt by that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think so. I mean, yeah, you know, I think he went to Aaron. He's like, what's the deal? Does he not like me and everything? And then I was like, oh man. And by the time we figured it out, everything had been sent out. There was nothing to be done about it. And it's like, obviously a huge regret because I do think of Steven, I mean, for the record, one of the best friends that I have.
For sure.
You know, a person that...
and it comes across that way on the air.
Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't be working together 15 years later.
Exactly.
If it wasn't the case. So it's hopefully just a funny story now.
Well, now, yeah, I was going to ask that. So it's a joke now. You guys have gotten past it, but did it come to a point where you had to have like hey man, I'm really sorry. I didn't realize this was what was going on. And like, did you ever really have a heart to heart about it?
I know I've talked to him about it. I don't know if we ever had a sit down like, hey, let's hash this thing out.
Okay.
But I've said, look, man, you know, if I had to do it over again, and it's funny because there were some other guys that did work at the radio station that I never was and am not nearly as close with, who got invitations to the wedding. And I'm like, look, you can see right there that this doesn't have anything to do with how I feel about you and all that. So it's I think it's a funny backstory now. Time heals.
Sure.
All that stuff.
So when did you figure it out? Because you talked about that kind of hard outer shell that Steven has. When did you kind of feel like you had a brother, you know, like, because it doesn't happen overnight. There had to have been some time together to really.
Yeah. There's probably not some specific moment in time where this epiphany hit me that this is one of my close friends. But, you know, we honestly, I think when we really hit it off was we went to River Falls, Wisconsin to cover Chiefs training camp together.
Yeah.
And we had a deal with some car dealership that gave us like a Camaro convertible or something to drive up there. And his oldest son, Richie, who's a grown man now and has his own career and all this stuff, you know, music business and everything, was like in 5th grade.
Wow.
And I pulled up to his house in the Northland, and he came. His mom was still alive at the time. His mom came out and introduced herself to me. It turned out she was from Wyandotte County like me. She was an Ontiveros. I went to school with some Ontiveros. We kind of had some similar, you know, we knew some of the same people. And we ended up, you know, you spend 8 hours in a car together with somebody. His son Richie came with us. He brought his son Richie with us.
That's cool.
And his youngest son Phil, who's now in college, it's crazy to think, was just a little toddler, and he came running out of the house. Richie, don't go! And he was crying, and it was tearing Steven up that we were going to leave his little son behind for the week. But when you spend 8 hours in a car together, you end up talking. Steven kind of just told me the whole background of his childhood and what his life was like, which helped me figure out right away why there was this this exterior that was so tough. And then he disclosed to me, and I don't remember when this happened, but I do remember him saying at some point in time, my background of growing up in Kansas City, Kansas, and some of the people that I had been around in my life. His uncle had been a police officer in KCK. My dad worked for the cops in KCK, so we knew a lot of the same police officers. Sure. We had been in a lot of the same type of juvenile mischief.
Okay.
In the inner city growing up, that he felt like that gave me some amount of street cred.
Okay.
Compared to maybe some of the other guys that he'd worked with in the past. And he was like, this isn't some, I don't know, some spoiled punk or whatever.
Sure.
And so I think he was willing to give me more of a chance than maybe some other guys that he would have worked with.
Wow.
So I don't know, but it just kind of developed over time.
Well, it will. Like, it's nothing that's going to happen overnight. It does take time, but I love what you guys do. I love the fact that your show isn't just a sports show. Like, yes, I mean, it is a sports talk show, but there's a lot of real life stuff that you guys talk about and you address. And for me anyway, I personally connect with that better than some of the other, I'm not going to call it garbage. It's just different substance that is out there. So,
well, I appreciate that. Stephen really takes the lead on that because he has one of the many things that Stephen is so great at is he has a sense for what to talk about and when. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a huge component to doing live talk radio of any kind, because that is what we're doing a podcast here. Podcasts are taking over a lot of the space now for your audio consumption. So where does live talk radio fit? And to me, you better be on point with what people want to hear about right now, Yep. And he just has a really good sense about it. And one of the things that Stephen does to me when he directs those real conversations, I don't think he's preachy about it. I don't think he forces it down your throat. I don't think he looks for reasons to bring that stuff up. I think it's like when there's a natural point, something that's causing us to have this conversation right now, it's time to get real. He will get real. Yeah. But it's not like, hey, look at me, I'm going to get real serious today and let's get into it. And I think that makes it more impactful when people hear it. It's like, oh, Stephen's getting serious right now.
It's raw emotion.
Yeah.
People resonate with that, I think. I mean, they connect with it. I know that I do. And so I definitely appreciate that. We're going to get into kind of some deep stuff a little bit later in this show as it relates to you and me and Stephen. But I wanted to move on a little bit to, you talked about sporting Kansas City or soccer being your passion. Before we started recording, Jillian had asked you how you kind of got involved with sporting Kansas City. That has actually kind of grown and developed over the last few years with what you're doing, not only with them, but with Major League Soccer as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah. I did the sporting games for 8 years and loved every second of it.
So how did that all come about? Because they had a play-by-play guy before you came in.
Yeah. Well, they had a couple. Cal Williams was the guy before me. I hit this kind of epiphany in 2006, and I can actually tell you the specific moment on that when I was traveling with the Royals and I was getting a little burned out on the idea of baseball, and just realizing that maybe this at least at this point in my life, I had gotten serious with my girlfriend. I was starting to picture married life and kids, and just the idea of never being home for 7 months out of the year just wasn't working, and also just, I don't know, I was kind of falling out of my passion for baseball at that level. And the World Cup was going on, and I was watching the World Cup every day, and I hit this epiphany that, man, I think this is my favorite sport. And I played a little soccer in high school, and that was about it. I knew it a little bit, but I just got obsessed with it, and I started watching all these games in all these other countries. The global aspect of the sport really appealed to me as well. And so the new owners at Sporting Kansas City, the Wizards at the time, would hear me talk on the radio. Little known to me, they were listening to the morning show too, and they would listen to me talk about how great soccer was and how we should go to the Wizards games. And they started kind of rolling out the red carpet for me a little bit and invite me to games. So I became a season ticket holder, and they would always take me out and show me the construction of the new stadium and things like that. And so I would take my kids to the games, and we went to the games in from 2010 when they opened the stadium, 2015. And then whatever happened between them and Cal, they weren't working something out. They were going to go their separate ways, and they came to me. and asked me if I wanted to do the play-by-play. And
was that because you referred to talking about soccer as much as you did on the Border Patrol, but you also had a background in doing play-by-play because you had done the women's.
Yeah, I was still doing the KU women's games at that time, and I'd do some soccer on the side a little bit here and there. No, I'd probably done less than 10 soccer games in my whole life before they asked me.
Wow.
But I'm one of those, I do genuinely believe that the biggest personal growth in your life happens when you get out of your comfort zone. It forces you to grow and really study and learn. And my wife actually I was a little hesitant, honestly, to take the job because I was doing KU women's basketball. We didn't know how soon it would be till Bob Davis was going to retire. I was doing the sidelines for KU football. I'm a fourth generation Jayhawk, love KU and all this stuff. And everybody in my family really wanted me to hang in there and see if I'd have a chance to get that job whenever it came open. And my wife, who was also a Jayhawk, said, you need to take that job. That job is the job you were meant to do. And so we did. We took it, and I didn't regret it for a second. It was the best 8 years. I mean, I got to be the play-by-play guy for for the team that I loved the most in Kansas City for 8 years. I would have done it for the rest of my career if the model hadn't got disrupted by the league. They took the local television broadcasts away from everybody and centralized it kind of the way the NFL does, where you get one broadcast for every game around the league now. And that's what I'm doing now for MLS and Apple and Fox, and which is a really exciting opportunity. But anyways, yeah, so I decided to make the leap and give it a shot. And it's funny looking back on it, I thought I knew soccer well and was going to be good at it. And it's kind of like, it's scarier looking back on it. Like, man, what was I thinking?
Like how little you did know.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And you're like, and I still did it. And they kept asking me back.
Yeah, I was able to fake my way through it long enough, I guess.
Well, I mean, you did that for 8 years?
8 years,
yeah. And so this is the first year doing the TV?
That's right.
Are you liking that?
I'm loving it.
Were you as apprehensive about doing that as you were about starting doing play-by-play?
About going to the national stuff with no, I went after this with every possible thing I had.
Is that a significant what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, pay raise?
It's a pay raise.
Okay.
I don't know what defines significant, but it's very like you're on a high wire now, like we're all on 1 year contracts. You know what I mean? Like there's no job security. We're on tryouts, and there is a scary part about that when you have 3 kids and people that are dependent on you and all that. But again, courage over comfort. And I decided a few years. So I don't know how long of a story you want me to tell here.
Go for it, man.
I tell long stories.
That's okay. This is all about you, pal.
So three years into, hopefully this will inspire somebody that's listening, even though
I love it.
Take the soccer component out of it. Do the Ted Lasso thing where just forget the soccer part and just think about whatever your life is if you're listening to this right now.
Fill the blank in.
So there was a midfielder that played for Sporting Kansas City named Benny Feilhaber. He was one of the best midfielders in American history. He played at the World Cup. He scored one of the greatest goals that the United States has ever scored against Mexico, their biggest rivals. And he helped Sporting Kansas City win MLS Cup in 2013. And I just revered him as a soccer player. He just an artist on the field. Mentally one of the most intelligent players you'd ever see and just gifted with the ball at his foot. And a guy that loves to talk soccer. And so all of a sudden I'm doing play-by-play and for his games. And before the season, this was maybe after this was going into my 3rd year, I think, at Sporting. The PR guy, Rob Thompson, said, hey, I want you to sit down with some of the guys and get to know them a little bit during preseason so that when the season starts, you have a good rapport with them. So Benny Feilhaber comes to my hotel room and we're supposed to hang out for an hour and just talk. And right at the start of the conversation, he says, hey, how come you're not doing national stuff? And I said, well, I don't know, man. I just started doing soccer like 2 years ago. I'm trying to see if I can do this, really. I'm just trying to prove to myself that I belong here in the first place. And he said, well, I watch all the games and I watch all the other guys, and I think you're as good as the network guys. And I don't think you should sell yourself short. I think it seems like a bit of a cop-out to me.
Wow.
And I mean,
coming from him.
Yeah.
This guy you admire.
From him,
yeah.
you know, and so that gave me the confidence to reach out to Fox. And I reached out to the number one play-by-play guy, Fox, John Strong, and said, man, I don't even know where to start. I've never tried to get a network job in my life. I've been in Kansas City my whole career, and I had gotten to the point where I was pretty much good with being in Kansas City. This is where I was born and raised. I don't want to go anywhere else. And he said, well, here's the guys to contact at Fox. This is who you should talk to. And I started getting some opportunities at Fox. I've been doing games for them on a fill-in basis for 3 years now. And I set for myself the goal of trying to get on the World Cup roster. And I missed out on the World Cup roster this past year, from what they told me anyways, very closely.
Wow.
I was at least considered for the position, which I felt honored, but also,
sure, disappointed.
But so I want to be on the World Cup roster when the World Cup comes to Kansas City. That's my goal. And I want to give everything I've got. I want to put myself in every advantageous position to get there. I want, whether I make it or not, when the World Cup rolls around, I want to be able to look back and say, I did everything I possibly could. I love
this.
To have a chance at it. And that might mean taking risks. That might mean getting out of my comfort zone again. But so as soon as this thing happened with Major League Soccer and Apple and Fox, I did everything I could to be a part of it. I wanted to do everything I could to be a part of it. So no, there was no...
Well, that's one of the stepping stones to kind of get there.
Yeah. This was not one where they came to me and I was like, I don't know. This was more... how can I get this job? How can I get this job? If anything, I might have been too aggressive. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's how that went down. Yeah.
So how does Jillian then become a sideline reporter for the World Cup? Because I'm thinking that might be something in the future. I don't know.
Maybe.
Considering what a massive soccer fan she is, I think,
I mean, it's the sport I know the least about.
It really is for me too.
Really is.
I'm not going to lie. And I admire you so much for your passion for soccer, and it just oozes through the speakers when I'm listening to you and Steven talk about it. And I want to care because I'm a Kansas City guy, right? And I'm passionate about everything else that's sports related in Kansas City. And I want Sporting KC to do well.
Right.
Problem is that I didn't grow up around soccer.
Sure.
Not like we did with basketball and football in a small town in Northeast Kansas. It seemed like all of the soccer things were happening in the bigger cities because you were playing soccer in high school, right? And
I did my junior, senior year. Yeah. But even at my high school, our coach was reading out of a textbook. He didn't. But you
at least had a team. We didn't even have a team.
Yeah. But we didn't know what we were doing. And honestly, our athletic director made us play at a public park because he didn't think soccer was a real sport. It was a sport that the sissies who couldn't play football played. That was how they viewed it, at that time. And I do think...
I can see that. Did anybody...
Nobody else?
I didn't mean it the way it came across.
Yeah,
I can see that that's what the persona was.
Yeah.
I can see that people would treat it like that. It's not how I treat it.
But I do think
thanks, Jillian.
Exactly what you spoke to, and that's something that Peter Vermees, the head coach at Sporting, told me when I sat down to take the job. He told me, you have a really important job because in this country, our biggest problem is the average American doesn't know what's going on in this game. Yeah. They watch it and they see 22 people jogging around kicking a ball for no reason. Yet those same people who might not have ever played a down of tackle football in their lives watch a football game and they feel like they understand what's happening. And that's because the announcers are educating them on the game at all times. They're drawing diagrams. They're showing replays. They're explaining everything that's happening to you.
That is so true.
And he said that in America, we didn't have announcers who understood the game of soccer well enough to explain it to you in a way that made you understand what was happening. They just would take a play-by-play guy from another sport and drop him in, and then they would try to kind of call the game, and they were afraid to get too technical about any of it because they didn't understand the game well enough. And I really honestly, Peter Vermees, he sat me down. I've spent, I don't know how many hundreds of hours over the 8 years, him teaching me the game of soccer. And I thought I knew the game, and now I know enough to know what I don't know, honestly. But he educated me so much on it because he felt like that was a big component, and I think you're a perfect example. If the next kid like Ronnie grows up feeling like they understand the game, then the game's every sport's more exciting if you feel like you understand what's going on.
I feel the same way about ice hockey.
Right. I mean, hey, I feel that way about hunting. I've never been hunting in my entire
and
life.
I keep telling you I'm going to take you.
Here. But I'm
Not
sure
at
I
all.
would be fascinated by it, you know? But I remember being, I went fishing a few times when I lived in Ark City, and I was like, so this is what we do? We sit around here and
wait for a fish to bite.
Wait for something to happen, you know? And then, like, you know, now that I'm older and I have, like, my cousin's like a massive fisherman, and and when he describes all of the reasons it's such a wonderful thing to do, I'm like, I want to go fishing with you.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's the same way with any pursuit.
I would like to, and really it's on me. You know, it's nobody else's fault. It would require me to actually invest the time to learn.
But no one's this is entertainment. It's no one's obligation to.
I like to be entertained.
Yeah, but you know, it's not your obligation to go educate yourself on something to get yourself entertained. You know, if hopefully somebody, myself or somebody else, could suck you in to make you interested enough to start to find out. But you have a million other things going on, man.
Sure.
It's like,
and everybody can't love everything. So
100%.
like there's people that love to read books, and I'm like, that's amazing. I would love to love that, but I don't love that.
Yeah.
So if somebody's like, oh, this is a really great book and it's a great, you know, I'll be like, do they have an audiobook? Because I don't want it. Like, I can read, obviously, I just don't love it. I get distracted. I get bored. So like, it's funny because whenever we have these conversations, I have this kind of conversation a lot of times when somebody says, "Hey, I just don't really know anything about soccer." Yeah. You don't owe me an apology. Yeah. You're under no obligation to like it whatsoever. Now, if you want to make fun of it and act like it's not serious or legitimate or isn't worthy of your consideration, that'll bother me a little bit because that's, you know, any pursuit, you know, if you do that to something that somebody else cares about, it's just being disrespectful, right?
Yeah.
But just because you don't know it or care about it or love it doesn't mean you're being disrespectful. That's just that's
okay.
your taste,
So then I'm going to challenge you and potentially ruffle your feathers a little bit, because it's not my intent to do that. But this is the issue with what little I know about soccer that bothers me. There's two things.
I have one of those too, so we'll see.
Let's go.
Same.
Fire
Like a
away.
stereotype.
And I understand that the MLS and the FIFA and they're all have different rules and things, but I absolutely 100% with every muscle in my body cannot stand the idea of playing for a tie. That bothers me big time. There's a winner, there's a loser. Otherwise, I just wasted my time watching guys running up and down the field to play for a tie. I can't stand that. Now tell me why I shouldn't feel that way.
Well, I think if you use...
Or give me some insight. Maybe not how I should feel that way, but give me some insight.
Well, this is the way I would put it. At the end of whatever competition you're in, whether it's the league or a tournament, there is one winner. At the end of the day, that's what we're playing for here, right? Like, if I watch a Chiefs game, I don't care if they won or lost game 5 of the season. I care if they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And there can be ties in the NFL. They're very rare, but they do happen. Mm-hmm. But
I'm going to walk away from that game pissed off if it happens.
Yeah, but like, to me, okay.
Not pissed off. That's extreme. But
but like, that result is a result. It's not as good as a win, and it's not as bad as a loss, and it's going to affect where you stand when you get to the playoffs and whether or not you have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Okay. The result matters.
Yeah.
And so for me, like, it's like, you know, the old analogies of losing a battle but winning a war. Mm-hmm. Some battles are wins, some battles are losses, some battles are stalemates. But there's a winner at the end of the war, and there's a loser. And the way I look at it is, through the course of it, if you don't win enough games, you're not winning the title.
Right.
And there's nuance. I like nuance in life, and I like nuance in sport. Some wins feel like some draws feel like wins. Some draws feel like losses. And it all depends on the circumstances of the game. If you're playing against the best team in the league on their home field and 3 of your players are injured, and you can just grind and make yourself a defensive stalwart and hold them out of goal and get a point on the road, you come home going, we got something today. Mm-hmm.
But Nate, you would have to understand the game to get that sensation.
Yeah.
And this is why I don't like it. Because if for somebody like me, which let me back up a little bit, everybody tells me, if you don't know what you're missing until you go to a Sporting Kansas City game. It's so much energy and it's so incredible. And I'm like, and of course I'm open-minded to trying new things. I'd love to go. But then I see how many times, and again, I'm an uneducated soccer person. So does that even make sense? I'm uneducated on soccer. So I like the celebration in sports. somebody shoots a deep three and they hit it. Last, second shot, the celebrations throughout the game. I enjoy that about sports. Now I'm a person who doesn't understand all of the celebration that takes place and potentially having a tie because I don't understand the game. Wouldn't it be open the door to potentially introducing the sport to more fans if they had the ability to understand that there's a winner at the end of each game? Because there's a lot of ties that happen in MLS.
So
you see where I'm going with that?
Ronnie's acting like you actually have the authority to do this. Like he can talk you into changing this.
My stance on that
he's
is
on a national level now.
If we enacted these changes, we could turn soccer into the most popular sport in the world.
It already is, isn't it?
Oh,
yes.
Right.
It is. No, but
I was going to say,
so I don't think the ties are the problem.
But is that, and again, I'm asking out of ignorance, is that the rule in all of the different leagues throughout? It is.
Yeah.
Okay, but so World Cup comes around, a game can end in a tie?
Oh, yeah. Now, again, what I go back to is whatever the competition is, there's a winner and a loser at the end of the competition.
Right.
So at some point in time, the ties have to go away. So like in the World Cup, when you play group stage games, that's like, so you start off.
What does that mean?
Okay, so in the World Cup, you start off in a group of 4 teams.
Okay.
And everybody plays everybody. So you play 3 games, one against the 3 other opponents. The top 2 teams in terms of points go on to the knockout rounds. So if you win a game in the group stages, you get 3 points. If you draw, you get 1. So so it depends on what the circumstances are. You could really need to win to get on to the next round. Now, once you get to the knockout rounds, one team is advancing and one team's going home. And in those games, it goes to extra time. They play 30 minutes of overtime, but they call it extra time in soccer. And then if it's still tied, they go to penalty kicks.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people gripe about penalty kicks because it's like, well, that's like deciding a basketball game on a free throw shooting contest at the end, But soccer is a kind of sport where goals are hard to come by. And so you could play, and you're running upwards of 9 miles, start and stop, sprinting and all that. For 120 minutes, you're running upwards of over 10, 12 miles. You just can't go for that long. You have to, at some point, they go down to penalty kicks. So, So no, and when you get to playoffs and things like that, there are no draws. Those only happen in the kind of regular season components of games. And again, it's about racking up points. The team with the most points at the end of it is going to be the team that wins or goes on to the playoffs.
Very well said. That was a good rebuttal to my argument. The other thing that I don't like was, first of all, was that yours?
No.
The thing I don't like? All right, so here's number 2, and we'll see if it's yours. The flopping. The flopping, oh my gosh. Like I can't, I've tried to watch, my brother-in-law loves Sporting Kansas City, loves soccer in general. And I've sat down and watched it with them. And then when I see these guys basically barely get touched and they flop like Marcus Smart, who's the biggest flopper in college basketball. I'm just like, and then they sit there and they act like they just blew an ACL until the guy throws the card up or whatever, and then they stand up, and then they just run like nothing ever happened. That's so annoying to me.
I have zero rebuttal to you on that. I hate it. I think it's the worst part of the game.
In fact, college basketball actually started enforcing a rule that you couldn't flop.
Yeah.
And I would love to see that. If that was put in, I might take the sport a little bit more seriously.
But college basketball has the ridiculous charge foul where people jump in front of somebody and then fall over when they're not even trying to play defense. So
you hate the charge call altogether?
I hate the way it's implemented in college. I think it's an absolute farce. Okay. It encourages not playing defense. Jumping in front of someone and falling over is not guarding someone.
That's true.
I hate that.
Okay.
But and so here's my only defense is you're right. But every sport has things about it that drive me crazy. And the sports are usually, and I love pretty much every sport, I'm willing to overlook the things I hate about those sports and tolerate them because the sport is so great. Flopping sucks. It's terrible.
I wouldn't even mind it if it was on a minimal level, but it's so, incredibly significantly exaggerated.
It doesn't bother me if a guy tries to sell a foul.
Exactly.
We see flopping in the NFL now. Quarterbacks flop all the time, right? If somebody even comes close to a quarterback, they fall down and they point at their knee and they want a flag. So but what I hate is the faking of injuries.
Yes.
That's where in soccer you get guys that fake injuries and they stop the play of the game and everybody has to stop and stand around and pretend. And first of all, it's a boy who cried wolf because soccer is a sport that actually has a lot of very serious injuries. Broken legs, broken ankles, torn up knees, concussions happen happen all the time in soccer. And to me, you're disrespecting all the guys that really get hurt.
Yeah.
I grew up playing American sports where you were supposed to not show that you were hurt because then you're showing a sign of weakness to the other team. So I'm with you. I don't like it. I think there's some things they could do to get rid of it, or at least to minimize it. But unfortunately, the world of soccer has kind of encouraged it because they reward it. They reward it. And I'm with you. I don't like it at all. I don't think it's a good thing about the sport, and I won't try to defend it. But I think that everything else in the game is so wonderful and beautiful that I'm willing to put up with it.
I want to get with Jillian, what her issue was with it, but I wanted to also say that I do know that soccer is the most popular game in the world, but it can't be the most popular game in the United States. And I think that if it would introduce or potentially open the door, or am I wrong? Am I wrong in assuming that?
I don't think it will in my lifetime anyway, because we didn't invent it.
Fair enough.
We invented basketball, baseball, and football. And we have a monopoly pretty much on the major leagues in that sport.
That's fair, but
we're late to the game in soccer.
But could it open the door to introducing it to more? If we talked with some of the things that we discussed here,
what they found in Major League Soccer through the first 10 years, the league was struggling and shrinking, and it wasn't going to make it because they tried to Americanize it. They put penalty shootouts in after every game.
Okay,
they did exactly what. So there weren't any ties. They did all these different types of things to try to Americanize it, and it never caught on.
Okay.
Then they started actually joining the world of soccer, and they come up with names like Sporting Kansas City and Inter Miami and all this stuff, and they started bringing in other players. It became a well-respected league across the world.
Okay.
And now the franchises are selling for $400 million.
And it's continuing to grow.
There more people go to Atlanta United games than Atlanta Falcon games.
Wow.
I don't think it's going to pass. It's never going to come close to the NFL in my lifetime. Could it pass baseball? I don't think that's that far-fetched.
Wow.
But what I think they figured out was there's nothing wrong with the sport of soccer at all. It's the fact that we've never had it or been good at it in this country. And in this country, people want winners. America loves a winner. That's what Patton said, right?
Yeah.
And until the United States get to the point where they show they can compete with the best players in the world, most Americans are going to be a little dismissive of it. That, I think, is the bigger problem than whether or not there are ties or flopping.
That's very well said, Nate. I appreciate the explanation. Wow. So what's your issue with soccer?
Well, it's not an issue. It was just the stereotype, and I didn't know there was a name for it. So mine was flopping, but I didn't know that it was called that. I wrote down fake injuries because that's what I hear. So there's a little Mexican restaurant we go to, and they always have soccer on, right? I think that's the only channel they subscribe to.
Is it like the Telemundo? The Telemundo channel?
And but that's what I'm like, oh, look. And that's because I don't know anything about soccer. Yeah. And so it's kind of like watching a NASCAR race for a wreck. I will look when there's, when there's a flop. Now I know there's a flop. I didn't know it was a name.
One thing that actually really drives me crazy about it too is when you in America, soccer has developed as kind of a rich kid sport, right? It's pay to play. It's out in the suburbs. That's where you see this. I live out in Overland Park, and the soccer fields are just filled up with kids playing and everything. Yeah. Everywhere else in the world, it's an inner city. In fact, they used to, the adage in England was always that rugby is a gentleman's sport played by a thug sport played by gentlemen. Soccer is a gentleman's sport played by thugs. That's what they say in England because all the kids are inner city street kids.
Never heard that.
The guys that play soccer from Mexico, from Brazil, from Argentina, from almost every other country in the world are some of the toughest street kids you've ever met growing up in the favelas of Brazil. And yet they give off this sense of that they're really soft. And how it was explained to me by some people in the world of soccer is they want to win so badly that they don't care if you think they're a sissy. They don't care if you think they're soft. They don't care if you think they're dirty or cheap. They will do whatever it takes to get every advantage over you possible.
Including flopping.
Including trying to elbow you so that you will hit me and then flop so that you get a red card. Dirty little tricks like that. Okay. And I'm not condoning that, but it did kind of put a different spin on it in my head. It's like, I'll stoop to whatever means necessary to win this game against you. Okay. And that's kind of the mentality of the players that have a tendency to do that.
That sounds kind of like, because we were talking before we started recording about wrestling as well, because that's my favorite sport. So, no, I did never do it, but it's like the boys especially that get made fun of for wearing a singlet, right? And they're like, oh, you're going to wear that singlet, that onesie, that swimsuit or whatever. And they're like, they know they're tough enough that You can make fun of my singlet all you want. Let's get on the mat.
Yeah,
you know? Wear what you want and let's go.
Yeah, call me whatever you want.
I like that. That's good.
Wow, that's some good stuff.
Interesting.
All right, we're going to take a little break, and then whoops, I hit the, no, that was right. When we come back, I want to get some of Nate's favorite moments in covering sports in Kansas City over the last 15 years, and maybe some of his not so favorite moments.
All right.
Yeah, I
think you got a few of those?
Your least favorite sport too.
Your least favorite sport? It might be hunting. It's coming up when we come back with Nate Bukaty on the Papa Ron Podcast.
You're listening to the Papa Ron Podcast.
Welcome.
Keep up to date on new podcasts, discussion topics, and future guests. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Search Papa Ron Podcast and be sure to like and leave a comment. Now back to the show. Here again are your hosts, Ronnie Phillips and Jillian Gregg.
Hey, did you check out this new hat, my new lid that I got on? Have you seen me? You haven't seen me wear this?
I haven't seen you wear that. No.
I got a new gig. Dell's Power Sports in Grain Valley. And the reason I bring that up is because they got a really cool product called Clean AF, Clean Polish Protect, specifically formulated to protect and beautify surfaces, including plastic, vinyl, rubber, and carbon fiber. Water-resistant formulation is safe for use on gloss and matte finishes and makes the cleanup process easier by forming a durable coating that repels mud, dirt, and debris. Apply lightly, buff to a dry sheen. Perfect for all power sports enthusiasts. Check them out online at cleanabsolutelyflawless.com or in Grain Valley at Dell's Power Sports. Your favorite moment in Kansas City sports as a broadcaster for Sports Radio 810 over the last 15 years, Nate Bukaty?
That's tough, I bet.
So I'm going to go with the weird one. A little off the wall
weird
one, because, I mean, easy ones would be Royals winning the World Series, Chiefs winning the Super Bowl, Sporting winning the MLS Cup, KU winning the national championship. Yeah, that's the right answer.
Mm-hmm. I knew he was going to throw a jab in eventually.
You know, no, those would be all some great ones. But for me, just from an individual standpoint, when I first started, I told you at Sports Radio 810, I was brought over to be the guy that was going to cover the Kansas City Royals and travel with the team. Yep. And I was going to be the first guy ever to do on-field interviews with players as they were coming off the field after the game was over. And this was a big deal that, 810 had come up with and got the Royals to sign off on. And the Royals, this was going into the 2004 season. In 2003, they had that miraculous year. They went 83-79 with Tony Pena, and we thought they were going to build on it the next year and go to the playoffs, and they had brought in Benito Santiago and Juan Gonzalez. And so optimism going into that opening day was sky high, and it was a huge deal for
In fact, was that the one they won where Beltran hit the home run?
Beltran hit the walk-off home run. Mendy Lopez hit like a 3-run home run to tie the game, if I remember correctly, in the bottom of the ninth, and Beltran hit the walk-off home run to win.
Yep. Jose Lima was pitching then too, wasn't he?
Yes. Okay. And so that was my first home game for 810 and the Royals Radio Network, and I was in the dugout getting ready to interview somebody if the Royals won the game. And it was opening day, so the place is going crazy. Everybody thinks the Royals are going to win and go to the playoffs that year. And for 810, it was a big deal because it was a locally owned radio station. To get the rights to a Major League Baseball product was a huge upset and a coup for them. And so this was a big deal for the radio station too. And so Beltran, and I had developed a really good relationship with Carlos Beltran. He was probably, he was my favorite player to cover the whole time I was with the Royals. Him, Desi Relaford, and Mike Sweeney probably.
Desi Relaford?
Desi Relaford. I named my dog after Desi Relaford.
Really?
Man, we hit it off big time. Over a shared love of old school hip hop music, actually.
Okay.
But anyways.
Run DMC?
Yeah, all that stuff.
Wow. What was the other guy you said?
Mike Sweeney.
Mike Sweeney, of course.
Yeah, I mean, that's everybody loves Mike Sweeney and everything. But Beltran was always great with me. And so he's at home plate getting mobbed, and I felt comfortable enough as soon as the mob kind of broke up to get out there, and I had my microphone, and we did an interview on the field right after the game, and he was great, and it went out over the air, and everybody seemed to love it. Everybody was on cloud nine. The Royals are going to they went on to lose 100 games that year, by the way. But that moment in time, it was this huge moment, and Larry Moore, like the most legendary newscaster in Kansas City history.
KMBC Channel 9, by the way.
He sent me a handwritten note that I still have to this day saying that was one of the best moments of sports journalism I've ever heard in Kansas City.
What?
You did an outstanding job. The funniest part of it was he addressed it to Nick. Nick, you did this interview and it was great. And Larry Moore's son and I have had a lot of, I guess I've told the story in the air a few times and Larry's heard it and he feels like terrible about it. And the point is not to make him feel terrible. No. Because it was like the coolest thing ever. I don't care that he called me Nick.
Right.
That the fact that, because I was like 26 years old at the time.
Yeah.
And just kind of that was the first real gig in my career that I felt like I was like, I'm a real sportscaster, you know?
It was like getting a Bill Snyder written letter.
Yeah.
See what I did there? So I slipped that in.
Very similar. Did he call you the right name? Hey, Rick. Nice job.
I haven't gotten that letter yet.
You could have lied to me and told me you got one.
I got a couple autographs. But
Bob Davis got a handwritten note from Bill Snyder when he got into the Kansas Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame. And that's Bill Snyder right there.
Yeah.
The play-by-play voice of the Kansas Jayhawks got a handwritten letter from Bill Snyder saying congratulations.
I know we're getting off topic here, but Bob Davis is a legend.
Class
and
act.
as much as I love K-State, and if you're a K-State fan, you typically very much dislike KU. But Bob Davis was, one of the best ever. Yep. In my personal opinion, as a play-by-play broadcaster. I felt sorry for... gosh dang it.
Brian Haney?
Yes.
Yep.
Because those are huge shoes to fill. And I felt the same way when Mitch Holtis left to go to the Chiefs, Greg Sharp, Wyatt Thompson. I mean, Greg.
They've all been great, by the way. Everybody you just mentioned has been really good.
But those were my guys, even though I didn't like KU, I loved hearing Bob Davis call a game. He was so good at it. It was just really hard to fill those shoes. Sorry, I got off topic there, but that was your moment. That was your favorite.
I just thought I'd give you something different than just a typical,
Okay, so the most, what's the word I'm looking for? The dislikeful moment in sports, like something that really just burned you.
Well, the stat sheet flap,
I had it written down. I was going to bring it up.
I mean, that was the most...
So you got to explain it because Jillian doesn't know.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's funny because my wife always says, if you want people to stop talking about it, you got to stop talking about it. But we're being real here.
And that's the thing. I don't want, I don't know if you've listened to any prior podcasts, but this podcast is intended to be vulnerable, to pull back the curtain, get behind the surface and share something. And you and I had a moment when all of that happened. And so
I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it.
So go ahead and share what happened.
I was,
K-State's playing at Allen Fieldhouse. It's a K-State KU basketball game.
Yeah, it was like Big Monday or something like that. And the owners of Sporting Kansas City had offered me their seats that were right at the front row, press row. It used to be press row. Now, the high money alums can buy seats there to take my color commentator. He had never been to a game at Allen Fieldhouse before. So that's why they gave me the seats. Hey, why don't you take Matt to the game and he'll see what it's like. He was a guy from England, had never been to Allen Fieldhouse. So that's why we were sitting there. Because I had done the play-by-play for the KU women's basketball games for 14 years, I'm one of those people, I make friends with all the ushers and everything around there, and so every media timeout, they would go and hand stat sheets to the members of the media that kind of updated the stats from the last 4 minutes of the game. And the usher that I had known for a long time saw me sitting there next to the press seats. And just to be nice, he would give me a stat sheet every 4 minutes. So I had a pile of papers in front of me. It's just crazy the set of circumstances that led to the whole thing. And K-State was going to win the Big 12 that year. And it was so the rivalry was, when both teams are good, tensions are higher and all that. And KU was winning the game and it was handily. Late in the game. It was like, I don't even remember what the score, but they were up 10 points or something like that. And Xavier Sneed for K-State came diving out of bounds to catch a loose ball. And he landed on myself and my buddy. And we kind of caught him and, helped him up. And of course, this part nobody ever saw, but we clapped for him and said, hey, man, good effort, good hustle. And when he got up, he had put his hand on the table and he had a stat sheet stuck to his hand. And he walked over and just kind of handed it to me. And me being the smart ass that I am, thought was being funny and make him laugh. And I turned the stat sheet around and I said, hey, man, you need to look at this. You guys are getting out rebounded by 8 or whatever. I said to him, and I kind of shook the stat sheet at him, like, taunting him, basically.
Yeah, sure.
And in my mind, it was playful trash talk. He would laugh, I would laugh. Yeah. But it was right there on camera. and everybody saw it. And what they see is this arrogant jerk KU fan taunting an unpaid college basketball player.
Who's privileged and thinking that you're privileged that you're sitting in those seats because you're a member of Sports Radio 810 as part of the media.
And so then it gets out on, hey, the voice of sport in Kansas City, the guy from 810, look at him taunting this K-State basketball player, and it became a meme, and it was on every message board on Facebook. And I must have gotten, I don't know, 500 emails from angry K-State fans telling me exactly what they thought of me. And, it was, I got called out onto the carpet by all my employers for being stupid and putting myself in a position that would put their organizations in bad light.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. I'm not, feeling sorry for myself over any of it. And it was, for a while there, I thought maybe my career will be over because of this, and the dumbest out of all the stupid things I've done in my life, this could be the one that ends my career, and just, honestly, like getting all those emails, I responded to every email that I got, and I apologized and said, look, I feel stupid about it. I'm sorry. Some people accepted it. Other people were like, you don't mean it. You're just saying it because
they made you say that.
Yeah. Because you feel bad that everybody's beating you up now and all that stuff. But, it does hurt getting those, even though it's people that you don't know. And it was one of the things that I did have to, that was like a big learning moment though. Like when we get into the deeper stuff later, every moment of personal growth that's ever happened in my life has come as a result of the deepest pain that I've felt. Really? And this one is not the deepest pain I've ever felt, but it was up there. I mean, it was a traumatic moment in my life. I mean, it still kind of gives me, when I go to therapy now, we work on techniques on how to calm myself down when this episode in my life comes up, because it triggers.
Do you feel anxious right now talking about it?
I'm getting better. I'm getting better at it. But it did cause me to understand, if you're going to be in a job where you're in the public eye, people are going to have opinions about you, and you can't control what every single person thinks about you. You got to do your best to try to live a good life and be the person you want to be, and square it with yourself, and realize that some people are just going to hate you. And that doesn't mean like I'm trying to find the right words. Obviously, if I had to do it over again, I would not have done what I did.
Sure.
I feel stupid about it. I beat myself up like crazy about how stupid it was, and not seeing how I would have come across to everybody, when I did it. And there'll be a part of me that'll get thrown back in my face for the rest of my life. Anytime KU and K-State play each other in a big game, I'll get a few tweets from people and stuff like that. Yeah. The picture's still out there.
It'll never die.
Yeah, but it caused me to understand, like, you can't live your life concerning yourself with what people who don't really know you think of you.
Exactly.
You have to live your life looking at the man. I mean, the old Michael Jackson, look at the man in the mirror, man. Are you okay with yourself? And if you're not, you got to take a really hard look and make some changes.
Right.
And that caused me to look in the mirror and say, okay, why did I do what I did? How do I feel about it? I had to sit down at the dinner table with my kids, because my kids were getting grief from kids at school, about, hey, your dad, we don't like your dad anymore.
Yeah.
And that, I had to sit down but it gave a good opportunity for me to own my behavior in front of my children and say, look, your dad's not perfect either.
Right.
I do stupid things sometimes. I make mistakes. I'm going to try to learn from them. But one of the best things that came out of it, Jillian, was guys like Ronnie, especially K-State fans. As many emails as I got from K-State fans that were really upset with me, I got people like Ronnie who reached out to me and said, "Hey man, keep your chin up. I've been taking your back. I know what kind of guy you are. I know you're a good dude,
Sure.
and you just don't forget." Like it was Stephen St. John actually said to me after it happened. He said, "You need to take a real solid inventory right now of every person that has reached out to you in support, and everybody that's throwing you under the bus right now."
Yeah.
Because every one of those people that's throwing you under the bus right now, they were just waiting for the opportunity. They were always ready. But everybody that's got your back right now always had your back.
Right.
And now they've all kind of showed you their cards. You're actually kind of lucky. Now you know where you stand with all these people. And you can be friends with all of them, be nice to all of them. But now you know there are some people that'll, even when you do something stupid that's somewhat indefensible, they still care about you. They still love you. Yeah. And you did that. He did that.
And you could have left with that, or you could have left with considering that a worse moment and then letting that define you and be like, well, I screwed up. That's my career. And then like let that kind of take you down and down and down, Like you could have let it tear you down.
Yeah, you can.
People do it all the time.
Right.
People do it all the time.
I didn't bring that up, just so you know, and I know you know this, but for anybody who's listening, to pat myself on the back, that wasn't what the intention was. I just know that because I and you have we've all worked in radio, I can personally say that I have subjected myself for doing some really stupid things that I was concerned that I was going to get fired about or over. Mm-hmm. And luckily there was, well, one, either I was overthinking it way too much, or two, I was given a lot of grace and the ability to recognize my faults and move forward. Mm-hmm. And because I had worked in that limelight and had done some stupid things, and I, as a K-State fan, I was disappointed, if I'm being honest, that had happened. But I had a relationship with you and knew the type of person you were and knew that you felt the regret. And I felt the regret before I even turned on the radio. I saw the meme first thing in the morning. I hadn't listened to a second of the morning show. I had texted you the picture just to kind of flip you a hard time.
Yeah.
And it was not even you. It sounded like you wanted to throw up in your text message. Like you were so regretful. You apologized. Like, bro, that's okay, man. Not a big deal. And then I started going through my feed and this thing is showing up more.
How long ago was this?
3 years ago?
It was 2019.
Okay. Yeah. So 4 years ago. But what had happened, I got to be careful about how I say this. Let's just say that there is a person who was employed by the Kansas State Athletics division, whatever. Maybe his voice was used frequently, and he went on a tirade about Nate and how he should be fired immediately, and it pissed me off. And so I publicly, well, not that I'm anybody special and that anyone's going to listen to what I have to say, but I went to your defense as a K-State fan on that forum because I knew what that felt like. Like, man, I've made those mistakes before, and gosh, am I going to lose my career? Am I going to have to start all over? What is this going to look like? And so I just wanted to lift you up, man, and know that this isn't going to be the end for you. And,
well, it meant a lot, one of the things that my therapist is working with me on is that if I can learn to be more forgiving of myself, then I have a better chance of being more forgiving towards other people.
For sure.
And I definitely think it's something that as a society, we could stand to grant everybody a little more grace.
Definitely.
I don't know that it's anybody's fault in particular, other than we're just kind of designed to get whipped up into a frenzy. We see a little clip of some video that somebody sends us, and it's intended to make us mad and get us fired up, and that's what we do. So, hey man, a lot of people felt like I should have paid a much more serious price than I did. I feel like I paid a good price, for something stupid. And I try to learn from it.
I think that if anybody looks in the mirror truly or opens up the closet of skeletons, they're all have done something stupid or foolish at one point in time in their life. Yeah. In fact, I was going to bring this up too, and I'm not sure what level of comfort you're going to have talking about this, but people who are sports fans in this town are going to know this name. One person who did come to bat for you, because I heard it live on the air, was Kevin Keatsman, who is a K-State guy. And he told me he didn't tell me, he told his listeners that he had a direct conversation with you about that. What do you recall about that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of conversations that were had the next day, As all I remembered, he felt like I should have been suspended from the radio station for a while. And I think he felt like there was a double standard, that KU fans could get away with something like this.
That is not what I heard on the air.
Yeah, he told me that, that's what he told me, but he also said he felt really bad for me and that he knew I was a good guy, and that, he knew this was going to be, he had known because of the abuse he would get from KU fans all the time, how things were going to go for me from the K-State fans, and he sympathized with me over that. He's like, look, this is going to be tough. You're going to get it, and I've been there and I know how it feels. And he gave me a hug, but he felt like I should have been suspended. I don't know how long, I don't know how long he thought it should have been, but
what level of, because he had some sort of part ownership in the company, right?
Yeah, so he was an investor, and I don't know all the details of who.
But he didn't really have any say in the outcome of that. I
guess
right?
not enough.
Not because it didn't happen.
Situation, yeah.
What, do you have a relationship with him now?
Not. I mean, we've communicated a couple times. But not really. I mean, and it's not like it's one of those things where I don't want to talk to him or he doesn't want to talk to me. I think we've just kind of, he's doing his thing, I'm doing my thing. We got together, actually, the last time I remember getting together with him was actually I coordinated a Zoom birthday party for Don Fortune. And I reached out to Kevin to see if he wanted to be a part of it, and he joined in, and we all wished Don Fortune a happy birthday. It was like, during the pandemic, and Don's living in Florida now. And so we had a pretty good back and forth then. We've texted a couple times. We've texted a few times back and forth, but I wouldn't say it's like we don't get together a lot, anything like that.
So his dismissal from the radio station, how awkward was that for everybody that worked there? And if for those who don't understand, Kevin Kietzman, the former afternoon personality for Sports Radio 810 WHB, I don't even know how long ago it was, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. No, it had been more than 2 years ago. Anyway, made some, do you know anything about this, Jillian?
No, I know who he is, but I don't.
Right. So there was the whole issue with Tyreek Hill and basically what his character was because of some of the litigation that he was going through at that time when he was a fairly new member of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
And basically, you correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I perceived it after hearing it was that Kevin insinuated that there was some sort of wild asylum happening at Arrowhead because Coach Reed, Andy Reid, had a son who was employed by the Chiefs who had some, let's say, a shady past or had run into some legal troubles in the past. And so that caused an uproar.
That was 4 years ago. Was it 2019?
It wasn't very far after what had happened with me and the K-State thing.
Okay. Oh, that's probably true.
And so I don't really, to be honest with you, Ronnie, I don't want to talk too much about that because
that's fair.
This was that whole situation was very much colored by what I had just gone through.
Yeah.
With the K-State thing.
That's fair. Yeah.
And I didn't like the way that I had been treated in some ways by some people with my situation. And I had told myself, I'm not going to react the same way. And I just stayed away from it.
Fair enough.
And people were calling me a coward on social media for not chastising what Kevin had to say. And I was getting emails from people saying that this is gutless on your part. You should be taking a stand against what Kevin said and all this stuff. And I just said, my only response was, man, I have a tough enough time answering for the stuff I do in life and the things that I say. I'm not going to get into trying to justify what somebody else is doing or castigate what they're doing. You got a problem with what he said, take it up with him. And I just kind of wanted to leave it at that. And I don't know if it was the right place or not. But that's just kind of where I came down. And my old producer, Jake Gutierrez, he was the one that taught me this phrase. He'd say, man, if I would get to griping about what somebody else was doing in the building, for example, and he would say, man, I'm just trying to keep my side of the street clean.
Yeah.
I got enough on my plate to keep my side of the street clean. I'm not going to worry about the other side of the street.
But don't you think that you like, I mean, I don't know, maybe not, just in life in general, whether it's work or personal life or a friend group or whatever, don't you feel like that if the Kietzman thing had happened 2 years prior to you dealing with, you might have handled it totally differently.
Yeah.
And so, and then your guy you're talking about now, that was his response. He obviously dealt with something prior.
Yeah.
Where maybe he was mistreated or something. And
we might get to find out what that is, actually. I talked to Jake over the weekend.
Is he going to come on?
Yeah, I think so.
That show's going to be way more interesting than this one. Just telling you right now.
So that makes me think of something I was going to ask you about, only because of something that has been in the news the last couple of days that you probably haven't talked about on your show, but then it made me think about all the drama around Patrick Mahomes' family, spouse, brother. Do you even touch that kind of
Jackson? Are you talking about Jackson Mahomes?
Jackson and Brittany and all that. Like, do you even touch getting off the topic of sports and going to sports families? And it ends up being kind of tabloidish. And like what happened this week, I'm sure Eric Decker, but she's not even relevant in the sports world right now. But like his wife, did you see that story?
No.
Okay, well, ridiculous.
I saw a story about a baseball player whose wife had to pick up popcorn.
That's what it was.
Okay, yeah.
So that's
Bass,
Jesse
Anthony
James.
Bass.
Yeah, that's Jesse James Decker is married to Eric Decker, who played for the Broncos and the Titans and whatever. And so the girls are sisters.
Oh, gotcha.
And so it was Jesse James Decker, former country singer. I guess she's a country singer still. Was like, my sister was so rudely. So do you even?
I saw that tweet got 74 million impressions, and I saw this is what we're worried about right now.
I know it is.
This
ridiculous.
is what we're worried about.
It is ridiculous.
I mean, I don't know. It's like, I guess if we, get on our high horse and judge those things or judge Patrick Mahomes' family, then then we don't have to think about the mess that we got going on in our own lives.
Street, right?
Yeah, we're not. Yeah, so I get to make myself feel better than those people if I judge them or something.
Kind of the Jerry Springer effect.
Yeah, we don't really. Me and Steven don't really ever talk about Patrick's family. I mean, every once in a while it might come up briefly.
Yeah.
And we might make a little small joke or two about it, but in general, I don't know. I don't. It's his family, man. I mean, first of all, what do people want him to do?
Yeah.
And second of all, like, we don't know them. I guess we see some stuff that's happening in the news about Jackson, and it's not flattering. I've been around him a couple times. He was fine when I was around him.
Sure.
I don't know, like, I don't know them. I don't, because I guess that was another thing that hit me with the stat sheet thing too, is, I mean, I had people tell me that I was just a rotten human being.
Sure.
And I thought, okay, I did something really stupid.
Yeah.
But I love my kids.
Yeah.
I'm faithful to my wife.
Right.
I feel like most of the people that know me would say I'm a good, loyal, honest friend that's not perfect.
Right.
So, like, you saw a 6-second clip of one of my stupidest moments, and you're judging me as a human based on that. And because of that, I don't want to do that.
Right.
I don't know Jackson Mahomes.
Right.
I don't know what he's going through. I don't know what his struggles are in life. I don't know what it's like to be the brother of the greatest athlete in the world.
Yeah.
Well, and then
I'm not, somebody else can judge him, and I'm just not interested, you know?
Sure. Or you start thinking about your own family and go, okay, well, if you reach that next level, if you're Patrick Mahomes, but you're at his level, and you're like, well, what if they start picking on my family? Like, who are they going to pick? Like, you go,
and they will.
Everybody's got people around them that aren't perfect either.
Yeah.
So I just wondered if that was even something you guys touched on the radio or no.
We talked about that popcorn incident just from the standpoint of, should you clean up your popcorn on a plane? Like,
Please tell me most people said yes, clean up your kids' mess.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
We did. But I will say this on the flip side.
Yeah.
I've never been 5 months pregnant with 2 kids on a plane.
Yeah.
I've traveled with my wife and little kids, and it is a nightmare.
Yeah.
I will say that. It's a
not
nightmare.
easy, right?
Everybody could probably have stood to give each other a little more grace in that whole situation. You know?
Well, and nobody knows the whole situation, right? Yeah.
I don't think putting the flight attendant on blast is and trying to, like, mess up her career is the right way to handle it either, personally, but whatever.
Yeah. I agree.
You know?
I agree.
Yes.
Unless you just want press, right?
Right.
Maybe that's.
Well, you're getting some press with your backyard.
Yeah.
What in the world, ESPN? Do you know anything about Nate, the famous backyard of Nate Bukaty? Oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to try to get some imagery, and I'll be putting it up in the video version of this podcast, which again, you can find on YouTube or Spotify. But Nate does this thing in his backyard where he makes it look like Arrowhead, like the field, like Arrowhead Stadium or the soccer field at Sporting Kansas City. Do you have a quick picture you can pull up so Jillian can
do you get George Toma to come do it for you?
No, he does it.
I do it myself.
Yeah, he paints the lines and does, and so his kids, obviously, the whole neighborhood wants to show up and play football in their backyard. He gets out there, plays football with them, and
I think my own kids kind of think it's lame. Like, the neighbor kids all think it's great. You know how it is.
Yeah, right. You're not cool to your own kids.
No.
I think it's so cool.
I hope someday they'll look back on it and think of it very fondly. I'm trying to find a good picture.
I bring it up because
this
recently
was the video that went viral here.
Yes.
My son. But anyways, you can see the end zone there.
Can you text me that video?
Yeah.
When we can do it later, but I want to put that into the video.
Is it decorated now or decorate? What do you call it? Like, is it groomed now?
Well, I've had. This is how nerdy I've gotten with this whole thing.
Oh, no.
I've had to patch up a lot of dead spots of grass because it got chewed up during the football season, which is how I want it to be, because I want kids out there playing on it.
Right.
So I've been patching up all the dead spots, and so once that gets grown, it'll be a soccer field here again pretty soon. So I did even during Super Bowl, I painted the end zones gold because the Chiefs had a gold end zone in the Super Bowl, and I put the Super Bowl logos at the.
Yeah, you did.
How much money do you spend in painting your backyard?
God, I don't know. So do you want to know the backstory on how that started?
Sure.
And this goes back.
And by the way, we've got about. Because you got to leave by 3, you do 2, so we got about 20-ish minutes, and then I want to get into some other deep stuff. I'll try to do this real quick, but this goes back to we're going to get into mental health stuff and all that. And I told you that the biggest personal growth comes from the hardest moments, the biggest pain in my life. Mm-hmm. The pandemic was hard individually for me because I'm a big extrovert, and I don't like to sit at home alone. I like to be out doing things and interacting with people, and so
I really hated the lockdown part of it. Mm-hmm. My wife was working in healthcare though, so we were very strict observance of it. Mm-hmm. And my wife is a saint, and she's 100 times better human than I am. So I don't resent her for that at all. Like, we had to do what we had to do.
Sure.
But so I was looking for ways to make our house a better place to be. If this is the space that we're allotted in the world right now,
sure, yeah.
I want it to be a place where my kids where it's fun and we're not just stuck here miserable at home. And when I was a kid, my dad every once in a while would mow the backyard in the pattern of a football field by adjusting the level of the lawnmower.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And when he would do that, I would get so excited. Oh, man, we're going to play football. I'm going to pretend I'm on a real football field.
Oh, that's
so I did that in the backyard, and I posted a picture on Instagram, and somebody made a comment that said, you can buy field paint on Amazon.
Oh.
So I said, well, shoot, let's do that. So I ordered a case of paint from Amazon, and I just took some stakes and string and just kind of eyeballed it and made a soccer field.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we had that for the rest of the summer. And then when football season rolled around, I thought, I bet you I could do a football field.
Yeah.
And I just started geeking out over it more and more. And then as I started doing it, by the second year I was doing it, I'm like measuring the field. It's to scale. Every 5 feet is one stripe. So that's 10 yards.
Yeah.
It's, and I started looking at the games. I'm like, okay, the Arrowhead actually, it's outlined in black paint. So then I started ordering black paint, and then I started studying the font of the Chiefs across the end zone and all that stuff. And it's like, and my wife just looks at me and goes, what are you doing? But I think it's more for me than it even is the kids, because the kid in me gets to go out on my back deck and see a football field back there, and it makes me happy.
I thought it was so cool when I'm scrolling through my feed and ESPN had posted it, and it's made some reference to you throwing a dime to your son.
Yeah.
Because you had thrown that pass, which was really neat. But no, I did want to touch on that because it was cool that ESPN shared that and wanted to get the back history on that. All right, so I want to dive into some deep stuff here, and I'm going to start with this. Again, we have 20 minutes left here. I sent a text message to Nate and Steven on October 8th of 2021.
Okay.
I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety in January of 2022.
Okay.
Nate and Steven were talking on their morning show about Eric Bieniemy doing a press conference and talking about the mental health and the importance of being there as support for Josh Gordon, who was, for people that don't know, a hell of a talented receiver in the league, played with the Patriots. Was he somewhere else after? I think he bounced around Browns, after the Patriots. Yeah. But really made a name for himself with the Patriots. And so basically Nate and Steven were echoing the importance of mental illness, or the importance of mental health, and in bringing attention to mental illness. And I'm driving. I think I was actually dropping my kids off for daycare or something when I was listening to this. And it really, really resonated with me because I was going through such a difficult, confusing, dark time. And so I texted Nate and Steven and said, hey guys, this is Ronnie Phillips. I'm reluctant to send this text because it shows vulnerability, but I feel safe doing it because I feel like I know you two well enough to trust you and know you're solid guys. For what it's worth, your validation of Bieniemy's comments on Josh Gordon went beyond the surface of being a sports fan, and I appreciate it more than I can explain. I've been battling some shit/demons for a while, but more so over the last year. I've tried to hide it, and that is exhausting and eventually has led to self-shame. It's still hard to talk about now. This isn't a cry for help. It's simply a thank you. Your comments lifted me up today, and I needed that. It told me that I'm not alone and I shouldn't shame myself because deep down, I know I'm a good person. If that conversation had that kind of impact on me, there is no way I'm the only one. Your thoughts and perspective had to have had an impact on many others listening. Again, proving that you guys are genuine guys with huge hearts that care about all people. Sorry to get deep with you, but I can't even read because I got tears in my eyes. Can't read. It's all blurry. Where did I leave off? I felt like you needed to know that it had an impact on me at that time, and I needed to hear it. Have a great weekend. And then, of course, Steven and Nate both replied. And at that point, Nate had shared with me that you had been also, and we didn't get into it in that text message, but we've shared a little bit since then, that you have been battling some anxiety. And so I want you to talk about it to your level of comfort. But I do feel like, as you know, this podcast was inspired because of what I went through, an effort to no longer internalize what I went through, to challenge myself to be open about it, and intended originally to be medicine for me. But what I found is that being a person who's got some little notoriety, that by being vulnerable and sharing my story, it gives other people hope, and it has resonated with others and helped others. And so I'm hopeful at whatever level that you're comfortable sharing it, you could have that same impact on others as well.
Well, that was a very powerful moment when you sent that text. And we got a lot of text messages like that from different people, or people reaching out to us. And sometimes on the morning show, you don't realize who's going to be listening, how your words are going to affect them. And it's kind of like a reminder, like, oh, what I say does kind of matter right now.
It matters, yeah.
For me personally, I have had a tendency to worry myself sick, literally. I've ended up with an intestinal infection that my doctors always said was about your diet, and diet matters. I'm not saying it doesn't, but in this particular instance, my wife, who's a physical therapist, and I've gotten this infection like 3, 4, or 5 different times over the years, the 17 years I've known my wife, and they would always say, well, keep track of what you were eating, because it could be nuts, it could be seeds that get into your intestinal system and get stuck in there, and that's what's causing this infection. And there was never a similar thing. I was like, well, I'll cut out all the nuts and seeds and everything, and then what happened? And my wife finally one day said, there's been one common denominator every time you've had this intestinal infection, and it's a serious type of infection that can cause you to have part of your colon taken out, if it doesn't, if you don't get it under control. So it's something I need to take very seriously. And she said, there's been one common denominator. Every time you've gotten this, you have been incredibly stressed out and worried about your future. And the first time was when the Royals, I was traveling with the Royals, and they were losing 100 games every year. 810 was upset because they were losing boatloads of money on it. The Royals were upset because I was working at the radio station that was trashing them on the air all day, every day, because they were terrible. Yeah. So the Royals were mad at me. 810 wasn't happy with my job, and I had just met the woman of my dreams. My wife is absolutely the woman of my dreams. I mean, like, I have recurring nightmares that she wakes up and tells me she's going to leave me. I haven't had one of those in about 1.5 years, by the way, but that's happened that's happened off and on.
Wow.
And I knew I wanted to propose to this gal. And I was one of those guys that thought, I'm probably never going to get married because I'm never going to meet the type of person that meets the level of what I feel like I need to commit my entire life to him. And I knew I wanted to marry her. And I thought my career was I'm always like sure that my career is about to go up in flames any minute. That's another one of the constant fears I live with, is this career that I wanted my entire life is going to evaporate on me any minute. And I was really thinking that was going to happen at that time, and I worried myself sick. And I've done it. Then when my dad almost died of long COVID, November 2 years ago now, whatever. And he was long COVID, so I was able to visit him in the hospital because he didn't have COVID anymore. He had all the blood clots that came after it. So I was able to visit him in the hospital. So I was spending hours in the hospital with my dad, who was this close to dying, and getting emails from everybody in my family trying to tell me what to say to him to help him, wake up, and trying to deal with all that stuff. And I got the infection again. I worried myself sick. Wow. And there's I could give you the other examples, but it was those moments.
Always those times, yeah.
It was anxiety. It was anxiety. I literally worried myself sick. And when I start to feel moments of anxiety now, I feel the pinch in that same part of my intestine coming on. Wow. And my wife has taught me to breathe through it. Now I am seeing a therapist to try to work on managing, all the anxieties that I feel in the world. And my wife being a physical therapist is what destigmatized mental therapy for me, because as I've told you, she's calling me right now. She can probably hear me.
That's why she's the woman of your dreams.
Honestly, it's obnoxious how much I revere this person. She's just an incredible human being, and she has taught me that physical therapy is also mental therapy.
Yeah.
You know, your brain informs everything that your body does.
Yeah.
And so when she's trying to get you to rehab your knee, she's actually training your brain too to understand what you're feeling and why you're feeling it, because your brain misinterprets data all the time. It might tell you have a hamstring injury because it's getting a nerve signal and it's misreading it. You know, it's just like your brain misinterprets. You know, my intestines are involved with me being stressed out, right? And I honestly, I will admit, man, when I was growing up, I had to go to counseling. When my parents got divorced, and I resented every second of it. And I thought it was a waste of time. And I thought it was for people that are mentally weak, that you need somebody to help them solve their problems for them. And because, and we talked about it earlier with soccer, you don't show weakness. You don't show that you're, like somehow that's a sign of toughness, is to pretend that you've never been hurt, or to pretend that you don't need help sometimes. Right. And that's just a farce, And so anyways, going through all that and being married to my wife, and her teaching me, you don't have to have an ACL tear to benefit from therapy. Sometimes you just have a sore back. Yeah. It's not devastating. It's not something that's going to require surgery or lay you up for 6 months. Sometimes you need intensive therapy because you're dealing suicidal depression. You need somebody right now. Yeah. But sometimes you got a bad back or you got some anxiety.
Right.
You're worried about things. Why? And like, the idea, I'll use that analogy I told you earlier from the jiu-jitsu class I took.
Perfect.
When I was laying on my back in the first jiu-jitsu class I ever took, and the guys got on top of me, and that's where they start you. Now, what are you going to do about it? And my first reaction was to push the guy and try to roll away from him. And the jiu-jitsu instructor said, this is like life. The man on top of you is a problem right now for you. When you have a problem in life, when you turn your back on it like you just did, does the problem go away? No. It's now got control of you, because now that man has your back and he can choke you out in a second. You got to turn and face your problems in life. How much braver and tougher is it to actually own what you're going through, that you're vulnerable, that you can use help, and to attack the problem? And for me, it's like, okay, now when I feel that pinch in my intestine, I understand where it's coming from. Yeah. And it actually calms me down, because instead of freaking out going, oh my God, I got to get on antibiotics again. And, I could end up with, having to have a colon surgery. And then you start worrying more and more, and it gets worse and worse because you're freaked out about it because you don't understand. But now I'm like, okay, I'm stressing out about some things that I can't control right now. Yep. And I need to be okay with the fact that I'm not in control of everything that's happening in my life, and I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And you know who taught me that more than anybody? One of the last episodes I had with this, right before the pandemic. This is great. I know we're running out of time, but this is a good one. We were pregnant with our third child. Okay. My wife and I had 2 kids. And we had decided 6 years later that we wanted a third. And so we went for it. And everyone that we were friends with said, what are you guys, nuts? Are you crazy? Like, you just got out of the diapers and all that stuff, and now you're going to be broke the rest of your life and everything. And then right about that time was when the news started coming out that Major League Soccer was going to take the broadcast rights away from the local markets, which I had just made this big career pivot to go to Sporting Kansas City. Right. And I would have done that the rest of my career if I had been given the opportunity. And now I started stressing out, going, okay, my wife's about to have a kid. Yep. What is going to happen to my career? In 18 years, I'm going to have another kid to try to help get through college. Yeah. All this stuff. I don't even know what my career is going to look like in 3 years from now. Yeah. And I worried myself into one of those infections. And 2 things really gave me clear perspective on why that was so stupid. First of all, Jake Gutierrez, who you guys are going to have on the podcast, I told him he was one of those guys I could talk to. I could say, man, I'm in a bad place right now. I'm freaked out. I'm worried, sick. I'm literally worried, sick. And he turned to me and he said, when are you going to realize the powerful entity that you are as a human being? And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, look at the life that you have right now. The wife that you always talk about, she's the woman of your dreams. You married exactly what you wanted to marry, right? I said, yeah. Your career, you wanted to be a sportscaster since you were 10 years old. You're doing it right now, right? Yeah. And I said, and I'm worried about losing it all. And he said, so what if you did? You've already built the life you envisioned for yourself once. You, of all people, should know you can do it.
Yeah.
So if it was all ripped away from you tomorrow, why wouldn't you have any confidence in yourself that you could envision whatever the next part of your life is going to look like and put it together for yourself? You've already done it. You know the roadmap. You should have all the confidence in the world that no matter what happens, you're going to be okay. And man, that hit me hard. And every time I start, because I still have, my brain tends to go worst case scenario every time.
Okay.
What if this doesn't work out with Major League Soccer and they dump me on the side of the road and now I'm out, I got to find something else to do. And every time I think about that conversation with Jake and I go, I don't know how it'll work out, but it'll be okay. And here's the thing then, you know what happened a month after that conversation? The world shut down because of a pandemic that I wasn't even worried about, that I didn't even know existed.
Right.
My entire world, everybody's entire world was turned upside down.
Yep.
I was spending all this wasted energy worrying about something that might happen 3 years from now, when something way worse was coming a month away.
Yeah.
And we got through it, by the way.
Yeah.
But so none of us know what's around the corner.
That's it.
And so if you spend all this time worrying about what might be around the corner, the stuff that is actually around the corner is going to hit you, and blindside you, and you're going to have to deal with it anyway. So anyways, that's a little bit of my story about how learning I'm scared a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel anxiety a lot, and how do I manage it? And I'm glad we're at a place now where we can have conversations like this.
Me too.
And I think more and more people are realizing that's not a sign of weakness; it's a sign of strength. Being willing to be vulnerable and put your heart out on the table in front of somebody else.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, man. What kind of how many sessions have you been
through? I've only had 2 sessions.
2 sessions.
Yeah.
And it's going well. You like it?
I'm loving it, but I realize that I'm just getting started.
You're just skimming the surface, aren't you?
Yeah. My therapist, I don't know, she's either going to love me or hate me because I got notebooks full of things I want to go over with her.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
I've got pages and pages of things to sort out with her, so we'll see how it
you're
goes.
giving her homework.
Yeah.
Like if you could just take this home and read it before our next session, it'd help us out probably.
Yeah.
Well, we got 5 minutes left. I wanted to ask, so what is the plans for Sports Radio 810 and yourself and Steven as it pertains to the NFL draft?
Oh, it's going to be amazing. Steven's going to be hosting some major party every night from here till through the draft.
He likes to party.
Well, but he's also, man, people love to be places where Steven is.
It's true. I love to be around Steven.
He's got that infectious personality and energy. So he's locked in on the draft. I'm going to be hosting the stuff on Wednesday and Thursday night in the Power and Light District.
Okay.
And I just hosted an event last night with Tim Grunhard, Christian Okoye, and Dante Hall, which was really fun.
Oh, cool.
And obviously, we're going to be carrying the draft live on 810, wall-to-wall coverage. We got guys that'll be at Arrowhead, guys that'll be down, because that's where the war room is for the Chiefs, and then guys down at Union Station. I'll be in the Power and Light District. We're going to be all over the place, kind of trying to cover it from every possible angle we can. What an event,
Yeah.
I mean, once in a lifetime.
So if you ain't going to be at Union Station, come find Nate at the Power and Light District. And as we close this thing out, I would like for you, in whatever time you want to allow, because you know how quickly you got to get out of here. But I love how much you try to, on the air, talk about your friend Sean Biggs and the foundation that you have. I would be remiss if I didn't give you this opportunity on this platform to promote that.
Okay, so that I guess the theme that I've been trying to hit, and this is going to be in my book someday, and if there's something I want people to take away from it, is to not be afraid of the pain that you will suffer in life.
Okay.
And for me, now maybe it's easier for me to say this because the greatest pain I've ever suffered in my life was when my friend Sean Biggs died of cancer 10 years ago now.
Okay.
Where this wristband, the last time I ever saw him, he gave me this. He was from Abilene, Kansas. Yep. He went to Kansas University with me. He went to MIT to grad school. He was 36 years old. He had a 5- and 6-year-old at the time, and I had just become a young father at that time and was learning what the magic of parenthood is at that age. And the fact that his kids were going to be ripped away from the opportunity to grow up with their dad and get to know him, and that he was going to be robbed of the opportunity to watch his kids grow up, was devastating to me. And at the wake in Boston, his daughter was 5 years old, and she went up to the casket and was screaming at the casket, "Daddy, wake up." And I mean, it just that's the deepest pain I've ever felt in my life. And watching Sean's mom kiss his casket and say, "Goodbye, sweetheart," as they, buried him. That pain caused me to start a charity foundation. Something I had no experience with. I don't know how to run a charity foundation. Sure. It was a year-long process of me calling people, figuring out how do you do it? What do they look like? How do I get a 501c3 set up? What are we going to do with our money? How are we going to raise money? What's the purpose of it? All these things. And 10 years later, the Sean Biggs Memorial Foundation's raised almost $1 million to help people battle cancer.
Way to go, Nate.
More importantly than the money, I have an incredibly close relationship with Sean's widow, Neha, who lives in Chicago. Millen and Simran, their kids, are high school age kids now. This past summer, I went and played golf with them in Chicago. With Millen wants to be a college golfer, and Simran plays tennis. And I played golf with Millen and tennis with Simran, and we all went to dinner together. And we are incredibly close to this day because of all this. I am prouder of what has happened with Big Steps than any single thing I've done in my life outside of being a husband or a father. Wow. And the reason I'm proud of it is not like, oh, pat me on the back, but it's been the most rewarding. Yeah. I've gotten more out of it. Yeah. And I would not have done all of this stuff. And honestly, at this point, like we did a 5K, 10K every year for the past 10 years. We're working on the next event because we put a stop to the 10K after this, or the race after this year. Okay. We did 10 years. I think we're going to do pickleball.
Okay. That seems to be a new hot thing right now.
But we've all, the guy, and we have a board of directors that have done just as much as me. I'm not taking I'm not taking all the credit. The board of directors have all done every bit as much work. They were all people that were close to Sean and were hurt, but we don't have the emotional energy. We don't feel the pain that we did, that it took to do all that. I needed to hurt really, really badly in order to do something like that. And so my point is, what the range of human emotions, joy and pain and fear and optimism and happiness and sadness, all that stuff, you have to feel it. Yeah. And if you feel it, don't be afraid of it. It's just what you do with it. When you're hurt that bad, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do with all this terrible energy that you have stored up inside? Are you going to use it to do something to make your life better? Yeah. Or are you going to let it eat you up and tear you down? And so that's my message. If you're feeling pain, it's okay. It's okay to feel deep pain, because if you use it the right way, it will. It's just like they say, like when is the soil the most fertile is right after a forest fire, right? Yep. And that's my message. So whatever it is that you're going through in life, it's all right, and use that energy to make something beautiful happen as a result.
I heard somebody say, I don't know, remember who it was. I think her name is Lisa Harper, a teacher, and she said that pain is a promotion. Now you have to welcome that. You can sit in it, and you can, you can not let it be. But
do you know who Eric Thomas is? E.T., the hip hop preacher.
I don't.
He's the guy who's got the story about. Well, it's a long story. We don't have time, but it's
I'll have to check him out now.
You got to check him out. He's intense. He's one of those motivational speaker guys. Yeah. But he tells this story, and the end of the story is when you want to breathe as bad as you want to succeed, or when you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, that's when you're successful. And so it's something that I've kind of lived by. But he also says something in that story that don't cry when you've failed, don't cry when you've lost. Cry when you've succeeded. You've already got there. Get a reward out of it.
Yeah,
and so I think that's it kind of all falls together. Man, we talked about so much. I mean, this is like, I love these kind of episodes because it covers all of the things that I selfishly love: sports, personal development, human or rather mental health, and vulnerability and everything, dude. I know that we're not like super close like you and Steven, but you have always been a great friend to me. I love you like a brother. Thank you for always taking my call, taking my text, taking my email. Thank you for driving all the way across town to be here and a part of this. you're welcome here anytime. Jillian, I apologize that I've completely dominated with this. She came into it. She goes, well, you're the sports guy.
I assume we're talking about sports.
Yeah.
I'll just, you know what? I got my
a little sports
drink and I'm good.
Send my best to Steven. The Heartland premiere is coming up on June 17th. The golf tournament is coming up on June 16th. And so we'd love to connect with you soon maybe come in on 810 and promote that and try to raise some money for Peace Partnership. So thank you. Oh, one last thing. We're going to make this worth your time in some capacity. Brown Piercy Cattle Company, who is a proud sponsor of the Papa Ron podcast, is going to give you a guest gift box, 4 premium thick cut steaks, 4 of their famous steak burgers, 2 family size roasts, and 4 pounds of 93% lean ground beef, man.
Thank you very much.
You got
awesome.
Thank you so much. Jillian, thank you for being here. Thank you for your support and everything that we do here with the Papa Ron podcast. Send my best to everybody over at 810 Nate Bukaty. Tell Steven I said hello. We'll hope to see you soon. That's going to wrap it up for this episode 36 of the Papa Ron podcast with Nate Bukaty.
You've been listening to the Papa Ron podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, hit subscribe now on the podcast platform. Follow the Papa Ron podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And while you're there, like, comment, and share. Until next time, thanks for listening to the Papa Ron podcast. Papa Ron podcast. Papa Ron podcast.